Fred. Fred Hood, are you there? Okay, here's the long awaited for tutorial on soldering a motor into a Eurosport. So I want to make sure that the motor, first of all, fits well. Everything sets down onto the block. And if you'll notice, the spur gear is pretty inboard from the end of the pinion gear. So I'm going to be soldering this in. I'm going to take just a little bit of acid flux. Put a little dab. It's ready to be soldered. But first, I'm going to move the spur gear out towards the end of the pinion gear and hold it in place. Of course, the soldering iron has gone down to 360 degrees, which it usually does just when I need it to be hot. So there's no backlash at all with the spur gear pulled out towards the end of the pinion gear. We're almost up to 600 degrees here. All right, I'm going to take a little bit of my Radio Shack solder and just go in here and tack the motor. There we go. Then I'm going to push the spur gear back in, take a look at the backlash. Just imperceptible. So that should be good. If I push the spur gear out a little further, there's more resistance. And maybe I'll just hit that solder joint again. See how the spur gear is out even further. So I'm going to hit this. This will loosen the gear mesh slightly. Yep, felt the motor move just a little bit. Okay, we're going to push that back in. Tiny bit of backlash, just a tiny bit. And I want to test it to see how it sounds. Make sure that it's not too tight or too loose. I think a little bit too loose. Sounds a little better out there. That's the sound of a loose gear mesh to me. I think I had it right in the first place. I'm going to move this just out so that the edge of the spur is even with the edge of the pinion, the outer edge of the pinion. I'm going to hit this again. Just move the motor so that the pinion gear is, yeah, that feels like a good resistance. Let's see what that sounds like. One thing I don't like is too loose of a gear mesh. Too tight. Too tight. Maybe still a little bit too loose. Not quite happy with that yet. So here's what I'm going to do, just to adjust it a little bit more. I'm going to move the spur gear out about that far so that the edge of the spur gear is not even with the outside edge of the pinion. Hit it again with solder. Move the motor in so the pinion goes up against the spur gear. Get rid of that little spacer there. I still think that's going to be too loose. Let's just just a matter of if you... I think there's a very thin line between too loose and too tight. I'm going to add a little bit of paste flux in there just to get the solder flowing a little better. So I've got the spur gear right in the middle of the pinion gear. And I've got it heated up. And I can feel that I'm pushing the pinion gear pretty hard into the spur. I have the feeling that might be pretty good. So you can see it's a little bit more trial and error than you're led to believe from the way I said it at first. I like that. If I push it out, you can hear that it's starting to saw away at the gear. So I think that should work. That should work for you.